anything. There we go. All right, we are live. What is up, people? Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
And I'm back, and this time I am joined by someone. And this is Jess, who expressed interest from the very first time I did the first of these of the Bluth movies when I did Secret of NIMH. So I thought, yeah, that would be an opportunity to maybe do one not by myself. And the plan originally was, as we were going, I did an American Tale. And then I thought, okay, well, logically, the next thing to do is Land Before Time. Not only because it's next, but also because it's the one that, as a kid, I actually saw in the theater and had a lot of memories of. I can remember one day when I was like in grade 1. For some reason, I don't know why, but it was really rainy outside, which shouldn't have anything to do with what you're doing. But for some reason, not just my class, but like several classes came out into the hallway and watched this movie. Not this movie. Watched Land Before Time on VHS. My elementary school was an old school. It was built in 1940. It's gone now. So it was weird because like it had really big. It wasn't like hallways like you think of. Like it was big, wide, open hallways. So I guess to accommodate that, yeah, they had the TV out there. So we were all just sitting on the floor in the hallway, which was more spacious than like cramming a bunch, like several kids worth into a classroom.
So I remember those old schools.
Yeah.
The architecture.
Yeah, it was my second. Yeah, so I was in grade 1. When I was in grade 1, it was 1990, so that was its 50th anniversary, and we had like 50 anniversary T-shirts. It's pretty cool. It was the same elementary that my mother went to. I miss it. They tore it down. I don't think they tore it down until I was in college, but anyway, they tore it down and replaced it with a new modern building. And not only is the building different, but the whole layout, like the geography of that area is different. Where there used to be a hill isn't a hill. There's a parking lot where stuff used to be. All that stuff, all the geography of my youth is gone. But anyway, so Land Before Time was a big one that made a big impression on me, but I've never owned it for some reason. So then I took for granted I'd be able to find it, and I have not been able to find it. So we're going with this option, which is, for me, since I have Disney Plus and Disney owns Fox, because this is a movie that Don Bluth did in concert with Fox. This is a Fox animation production, so it's on Disney Plus. And luckily, Jess was able to snag a copy on DVD there.
It's a horrible cover.
Yeah, they almost all are, though. Like, none of them are good. Like, I hate the cover. I've got, like, the old bare bones edition of NIMH, Secret of NIMH, and it's a terrible cover. And, I mean, I love that movie.
I think I saw that in the library, too. Yeah, it doesn't do the old posters justice.
No, it just looks all... I don't want to say cartoony because they are cartoons, but you know what I mean. It doesn't. Exactly. It doesn't properly convey the darkness of that movie. And it's going to ask you a little about sort of your own relationship with these movies in history. Because the thing for me was, like, it wasn't until I was a lot older that I really, like, I always knew they weren't Disney, but I didn't think anything beyond that. I didn't know anything about Don Bluth or his production company or his past history, because of course he did used to work with Disney before leaving. If anybody's interested in listening to me drone on about that, go back to the other ones and you'll hear me talk about Don Bluth's time as an animator in Disney and him leaving, I think, around 1979, 1980, and then taking a bunch of people with him to form his own studio, which led to the movies of the 80s, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the thing was, like, the movie I think is best is his first one, which is Secret of NIMH. Like, my relationship with that is weird because, like, I did see that as a small kid, not in theater, but somewhere. But for many years growing up, I didn't know what it was. I just had memories. I had hazy memories of this animated movie with mice that was fantasy and had a lot of darkness to it. But I didn't know. I can't remember when exactly I finally put the pieces together and found out what it was. But it wasn't until I was maybe in my teens, if maybe even coming close to when I went to college, that I finally found out it was Secret of NIMH. It was based on this book, etc. And it was Don Bluth's first movie. So like at that point, like I knew, like I said, I knew Land Before Time. And I know that, of course, I think the go-to movie a lot of people talk about is the 501, An American Tale. At least for me, growing up, people didn't talk about that movie. Like,
not really me either, but that's the one that got me. I saw that in theaters at 5 years old. Yeah, so that was my first Don Bluth.
Yeah, because I mean, I just remember like years ago, like seeing stuff like Community and things like that would make reference to it. There'd be pop culture references to that movie, and I was like, okay, so a lot of people know this movie and have seen this movie. It's not the one that made the impression on me, although I do like it. I talk about it a little in the thing, but I guess it was probably Land Before Time for me back when I knew what they were, because of course I was one of those typical dinosaur obsessed kids too.
Me too, and my son is too. He has.
Oh, that's great.
The original, and
yeah, from ages like 3 to 10, all I really cared about was dinosaurs, and in a big way. Like I go back then. My family traveled a lot, and we go on vacations and trips, and we go to like museums. And we'd be in the gift shop, and I'd be like, I want this. My parents would like be buying like this. They'd be looking at each other because I want some like really expensive like book. They're like, well, it is educational, and they usually caved and bought me. So I own some very good I own some kidsy books, but I own some non-kidsy dinosaur books too, like like actual texts. And very cool. And I just poured over them, and a lot of it's still up here. A lot of them is still in my memory. So of course, Land Before Time was a big deal to me, being about dinosaurs, just as like Jurassic Park was, even though I was finally coming out of that phase when Jurassic Park started. And I don't want to go on a tangent because we're going to get to what we get to, but I will just say Jurassic Park for me was the first movie in my life that I anticipated, that like there was buzz about it. It was in magazines. People talk about the show because of course this is before internet, was really big thing, 92, 93. But that was the first movie in my life. Like I knew I had read the book. I was too young for the book, but I read it anyway. It was probably over my head a lot because I was barely 10 when I read the book. But so that was the first movie in my life. It's funny now because now we just live in the internet age where everything's anticipated. There's articles up and everything. But back then, if you're going to anticipate a film, you had to like live and follow certain things and certain circles and stuff. And I was just a kid, but Jurassic Park was such a big deal because it was a Spielberg joint and all this, that it wound up crossing over. There were like newspaper articles about it, for Christ's sake, before it came out, talking about the effects and all this stuff. So that was the first movie of my life that like I knew was going to be coming out in a matter of months, and I was super excited for. And then I got chickenpox and couldn't go.
Oh.
Yeah. I finally saw it in theaters in 2010.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because that was definitely an experience for the early 90s in the theaters. It delivered for me. I didn't read the book beforehand. So it obviously delivered for you, though, even though you read the book.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was, again, when I was more naive about these sort of things, like I didn't understand why so many changes were made. I was like, why don't they just film the book? It's kind of a thing. But I mean, a lot of the changes, again, I don't want to take up too much time, but when we talk about movies that are based on books or say like a graphic novel or comic, for me, it's a very short list of movies that I think are good. And where they make the changes, like I'm like, there, it's actually okay. Jurassic Park is one of them. Akira is another one. The Crow is one. Those are all different from what they're based on, but in a way that I find acceptable because I'm very rough on that. But yeah. But anyway, so Don Bluth, I guess, was part of my childhood, but again, in a sort of a secondary way. Like I wasn't, I wasn't aware of who he was or his history or anything like that. All I knew is that there were some movies out there that were animated and they weren't Disney. And some of them at least were pretty good, and Land Before Time. But this one, of course, came in an era when that was kind of at its zenith. You're saying just before we went on, because the whole thing about Bluth and his company, so they were the only real competition for Disney in the 80s, blah, blah, blah. Again, you can see what I talked about and other things that sort of forced Disney to step up their game, kickstarted their Disney Renaissance, et cetera, et cetera. But by the mid to late 90s, there were other animation studios, including Fox, pumping out these movies. Prince of Egypt was another one. There was one called Road to El Dorado. There's other ones, like Swan Princess. There's another one that I always mix up with Swan Princess. It's like, there's a Camelot. There's like a Camelot movie. It's really terrible and annoying. But anyway, that was like 94, 95. So in that era, there was a lot of this stuff going on. And I remember whenever it was that this first became available on Disney Plus, a lot of people were saying how ironic it was because of Bluth's relationship with Disney, and of course now Disney owning Fox, it's on there. But also because a lot of people back in the day who were less plugged in about these sort of things just sort of assumed Anastasia was a Disney movie because it's presented just like Disney movies of that era, as we'll see when we get into it here. So hopefully that gave people enough time to get this queued up if they were going to do this along with us live. For me, it starts pretty much right at the Fox logo, so I've got it queued to that. Probably the volume's up too high as usual, and I'll have to adjust that.
Same here.
And I haven't seen the movie in a few years, so I forget a lot of it. It is very 90s in a lot of ways, as you might expect. Not so much with some of it. I mean, Angela Lansbury's in there. I don't know if that's particularly nice, and Christopher Lloyd. But then you've also got Meg Ryan in the lead role. John Cusack is like the romantic lead, and he's like friends with a guy voiced by Kelsey Grammer, so it is kind of a 90s checklist in a way.
Quite a variety cast, though.
Hank Azaria for our annoying comic relief character, which you need in all of these movies. all these movies have to have some comic relief character. Even in a movie like where the characters aren't human, like in something like Fievel, they still need some sort of side character that's like a joke. Those are in all the Bluth movies, usually voiced by Dom DeLuise, and people have heard me complain about that. I like Dom DeLuise, but he's just so one note in all
that's
those
true,
movies,
but I don't know if I'd have it any other way.
I guess. I mean, in most of the movies, it still fits. I guess the one is the first one. It feels wildly out of place in Secret of NIMH, just because how dark and serious Secret of NIMH is. And then you have his character, the Crow, just sort of bumbling around and just being loud and stupid.
Like you said, the same voice. It doesn't really fit in the darkness.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I do love Don Bluth, so I don't want to speak ill of him. He was a cool guy, and he was fun, and he definitely was funny. And obviously, he must have had a good relationship with Bluth. But anyway, we can kick things off here. Right. And yes, it is sort of a different kind of subject matter, and I will try I'll restrain myself, and we're not going to go too deeply into the real life stuff on this, but it is quite fascinating, the story this is based on. So we'll do a 3, 2, 1, and then we'll hit play. Okay.
Sounds good.
So 3, 2, 1, and there we go. I will adjust my volume. Hopefully I do have the subtitles on, so I'll be able to know what people are saying. So of course this is about, in a very loose way. So what's funny is this is 20th Century Fox. Fox already did a movie, a live-action movie in 1956 called Anastasia. So you could call this a loose remake of that movie because it did follow the same basic plot, the idea that Anastasia Romanov was still alive. And of course, that's a whole thing in the real world. There's been a lot of imposters of her over the years. Well,
that's what I was going to ask you. I knew this film, as many animations are, is based off of an earlier story. Mm-hmm. But I had also thought it was based off of some true events.
Well, I mean, they're going to have different reasons here for. I mean, anybody in the short version knows the Russian Revolution kicked off. The Bolsheviks took over, and the Bolsheviks took the royal family into custody, moved them around between a few different properties in secret, and over time gave them less and less freedom. And eventually, it's never been clarified who gave the order, whether it was Lenin or somebody else. It's never been completely sure. The order came down supposedly to kill them because of what they meant to the people. So one night, they were woken up at midnight, dragged down to a basement with some of their servants, and all shot to death. And what happened was, this was kept quiet for a while by the Soviets because it didn't look that good. And for 8 years, they denied it completely. So this was in 1918. So for the next 8 years, they openly denied it. And of course, they were now the ruling government. Eventually, they did admit that it happened. But in that 18-year interim, because it was a cover-up and because the bodies were hidden, after they were shot, they were put on a truck. The bodies were driven out to like some forest and buried. And they tried to burn them with acid to keep them from being identified. And the whole thing was really sloppy and terrible. But anyway, in that time, it left enough doubt for all sorts of rumors to go flying that maybe the family was still alive. And it was like, okay, the family's not alive. The Tsar's definitely dead. But maybe, 1 or 2 of the kids survived. And then that sort of gave some fertile ground for impersonators to show up. Probably the most famous one was a woman named Anna Anderson, who in the early 20s claimed to be Anastasia. She kind of kicked things off. And this movie, it comes from sort of those rumors and myth that even though the family died, maybe one of them did survive. And Anastasia is not the only impersonator there's been. There's been people claiming to be other people, including the boy, the young hemophiliac, which led to So of course, what they're going to do in this is they're going to really kind of, because it's a children's movie and stuff, they're really going to kind of just clamp down on the whole historical context thing here and try to make things a little simpler. It's like, they were the Tsar and they were the royal family and the Russians loved them. It's like, why then did the people turn on them? Well, they're going to be like, it was Rasputin. Because, Rasputin is such a weird character in real life. He feels made up. So he does make kind of the perfect scapegoat. Rasputin, by the way, was executed 2 years before them in 1916 when he was killed by Prince Yusupov or however his name was scouted. And that's the whole thing. And here he is looking very evil. He's one of the bad men of the world. So he makes for a great villain. He's in the Hellboy universe as a villain. He's all over the place.
Oh, really?
Right. So he's voiced by Christopher Lloyd, I believe. So you are a traitor, get out. And you can make a whole thing about this. So the thing about Rasputin very quickly was that he was one of those self-proclaimed mystics, and he was obviously a big fraud. But he showed up at the right time because the youngest of the family and only boy, so like the heir, he was a hemophiliac, which is serious business back then. Those people did not live long, you know. And Rasputin showed up claiming that he had mystical treatments that could heal him and keep him. So the mother welcomed him into the household because she was like any mother, you know, she was willing to do anything to help her child. And of course, wild rumor flew all around that Rasputin, not only that, was like sleeping with the Tsaress and all this stuff. And Rasputin was a well-known philanderer. He fucked anything that moved. He was known for going down and drinking in bars and exposing himself and waving his dick around and stuff. So, I mean, there is something to all that. And of course, he was eventually killed by people worried that he was having way too much influence on the royal family. And the whole story of his death is weird. People's like, he wouldn't die because it's like they poisoned him and he didn't die. They shot him and he didn't die. And then finally they threw him in a frozen river and he died, which, again, if you look into it, it all makes sense. But at the time, it did sort of sound like, and it fit with this whole thing about mysticism, right? Like, oh, he's a magician, he's magical. Maybe you can't kill him. So in this, the idea is they've seen through him as like an evil sorcerer. Apparently, he really is a sorcerer. They're going to throw him out, and now what? He's used his magic to turn the people against them, and now they have to escape, I guess. Oh, there's Bardock. I know that music box is important for some reason.
I remember that.
All right, yeah, that's right. So Bardock the Bat here is actually Rasputin's little sidekick. He's kind of like Iago in Aladdin, and that he's the bad guy's sidekick, except he's nicer than Iago. Although if you watch the sequel to Aladdin, Iago turns completely good. And if you watch the show Aladdin, he's part of the cast there. Because I guess you can't waste Gilbert Gottfried. So here they are, being just like chased through the snow by Rasputin himself. It's fitting tonight. I'm getting lots of snow out there, so it seems to sort of line up.
And I'm sure you say this every Don Bluth film, but man, it starts the animation with him is always just fantastic. It's beautiful.
Right. And what's funny is like Disney's known for that, of course, but in a way, one of the reasons he parted ways with them was he was upset that they started sort of cutting corners on that, and he didn't like that. He felt they were getting away from being more detailed, and that was one of the reasons why he left. So yeah, no, beautiful. Fox Animation Studio. And
well, like you said earlier, Disney had to step up their game because Bluth was kicking their butt in the early to mid 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to have particularly, I mean, you could say it was sort of like a one-off with Secret of NIMH, but then when American Tail came out and did so well, the year after Disney had lost at the box office to the Care Bears movie, with the abject failure that was the Black Cauldron, which is a very fascinating movie that Jay and I did a show on Movie Discussion Pocket Dimension. So anybody's interested in that can watch us cover that. And we talk all about that era in Disney, and Bluth, of course, figures in. Because that movie isn't really as bad as the historical context makes it look.
Yeah.
It's definitely a flawed movie, and I don't really like it. It has problems, but there are worse, I think, full feature-length animated Disney films. It had a lot to do with timing and all that. But yeah, it's great to see these shots of Russia. So this is supposed to be 10 years later. So this is the other thing where I don't really know much about how the math adds up here, because Anastasia was 17 years old when this happened. So this would make her like 27 now if she lived, which obviously she didn't, but for the sake of this. And they seem to present her like she's younger than that. It doesn't matter because it's all made up stuff anyway. So we're opening with a song, which again is very Disney-like. Not that they own that. Right. So this is somewhat true that like the people in Russia for years speculated that one or more of the royal family survived.
But it was never proven that they did, huh? Any of them did.
Right. Well, it eventually was proven that they couldn't have. Again, finally, somebody in 1979 found the grave, but that didn't become known because I don't know if it mattered, but the Soviets were still in power in 1979. So it wasn't until after the collapse in 91 that became public. And then years later, they did DNA tests like as recently as 2007 on the skeletons and stuff. And at first, they couldn't find all the bodies either. But yes, it's proven, that they all did die. And anybody that impersonated any of them was just an impersonator and liar. But there was doubt for decades. For instance, like when the first Anastasia movie came out in 56. When it came out in 56, I don't know how many people believed it, but it's one of those things that's like, well, it could be true. There was at least some doubt in there. Nowadays, we know it's very sad, but no, they were all taken down to the basement. They all died. And it is pretty horrible because they didn't all die right away. In the first volley of shots, most of the kids survived, and they had to shoot them again, and they bayoneted some of them. The whole thing was a shit show.
Oh.
And they were down in like a small basement, and the guns they used, it was before smokeless powder was really brought in, so the whole room was just full of smoke, and they had to wait for it, and yeah, it was a whole shit show. And again, getting rid of the bodies was a terrible thing. The truck broke down, like everything. The whole thing was sloppy and terrible.
Awful.
And awful because you're killing a family, and also some of the servants were killed too. I can't remember how many people were killed in total, but you have the Romanov family, which was 5 children. What is it? Yeah, 4 daughters, 1 son, and then the 2 parents, and then the others. One thing I can't remember is they're going to show that like the mother of the Tsar, who is going to be played by Angela Lansbury in this, they're saying she survived too. I don't think she did. All right, so here I think are our con artist guys. I think that's, yeah. All right, so there's, I don't know their names, but that's John Cusack and Kelsey Grammer. They're like con artist guys.
I'm definitely going to have to research some of this after the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy, crazy time. And I know I get too much into it, but like 20th century history, particularly the first half of the 20th century history, is like kind of a specialization of mine.
Well, I find it interesting. That's what I mean.
I was into it since about high school.
Deeper.
And, wrote some papers in high school and university on stuff like this, particularly World War I. World War One's a thing and of course the Russian Revolution happened during World War I. So the idea here is Anastasia has amnesia. She doesn't remember anything. She doesn't know who she is.
Yeah, I remember that. Because this one I don't know as well as some of Bluth's films. I saw it when it first came out on VHS. And already at that point, I'm in my mid-teens. So I always love animation, but you're kind of at an age of...
Right. At this point, this is where I'm starting to shift into anime for me. Because 97 was the year kind of when it was a boom over here. I would have been like in grade 8. And I was like, oh, this all lines up with everything. Like, anyway, which is funny. I've said before, like, I loved anime my whole life. But before then, I didn't really have a word for it or anything like that. And I didn't think too much of it because I watched the 80s Astro Boy. I watched Voltron, which was Go Lion, just with a new dub. I watched Saber Rider. So I love those shows, but at the time, I didn't have a word for it or really associate. Oh, there we go. I knew that was going to happen at least once.
It's okay. I never know if it's me either. That happens to me from time to time.
What's funny is because like when it shows it, it'll show on the bar. It'll show like I've got a weak signal for a little bit, and then it bounces back up. So I assume it's me. It's always a lot tougher when I host them myself, which is why I'm out here. I mean, we're doing a live commentary, so I'd be out here anyway. But I mean, if I was doing something else, I prefer to be in my bedroom, which is where I do Movie Discussion Pocket Dimension. But I don't think I could host in there because the signal, even though it's like it's just a wall, it shouldn't matter. But I don't know. Stupid Wi-Fi.
Somehow, yeah.
Right. So this movie also has like an adorable, non-talking animal sidekick, of course, the dog here.
It's always funny when you have like you just one talking animal and then of course another that's more realistic.
Yeah, kind of throws everything off.
Yeah.
Or it should, but we become so used to it, right?
That's true.
Because I mean, you watch something like Pocahontas, it has multiple of those, but none of them talk. So okay, we're all on the same page. But you watch like Aladdin, it's like Iago talks, but Abu doesn't, and Raja doesn't. And now same thing here. The dog is just a dog, but Bartok, I guess you could say, in the case of both Iago and Bartok, they are both the pets or familiars of like a sorcerer. So you could say they speak because they've been imbued with the power of speech by their master, maybe. I
was going to say with Iago, he's a parrot.
And he is a parrot, but so it's, yeah, right.
He's not going to have the vocabulary that Iago has, but...
Yeah. But you can always make the leap, like I said, that like perhaps they are imbued with the power of speech by their masters who are mystics or sorcerers or whatever.
Excellent.
Oh, another song already. Wow. I don't remember any of the songs. So they can't be that good, because if they were good, I'd remember them.
I don't either, and I wonder if that turned me off on this movie.
I'm going to assume that's not Meg Ryan, because I've never heard about Meg Ryan singing. I mean, a lot of actors who can sing, because that's a big part of breaking into the business, is like not just being able to act, being able to sing. So a lot of actors that we never saw sing before, it turns out they actually can sing, but I don't think it's the case with Meg Ryan. I'm not sure, though.
And I think a lot of these animated movies that have singing, even the Disney ones, they have a substitute, you know.
Yeah, it's a separate person, yeah.
Yep, stand-in.
I mean, there's definitely some exceptions. Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, the actress is the singer there. But
it was for Belle, huh?
Yep. Which is one thing. I mean, I get that people are hard on these things, and it's not like I like the live action remakes. They're just money grabs, and I'm an animation purist, so I prefer them. But I remember when the Beauty and the Beast remake came out, a lot of people were just saying like Emma Watson wasn't a good enough singer. I was like, she's okay. Like, I get she's not quite as good, but I thought people were kind of overly harsh on her.
Yeah, I thought she did fine in that. I don't know.
If you compare the two, yes, the original has a stronger, better voice, but it's not like I thought Emma Watson was like completely lacking.
Nah.
I mean, isn't it worse doing Aladdin and having like Will Smith singing parts?
I couldn't even finish the Aladdin one, the live action Aladdin.
You know what's funny is like I held off watching it because I don't like Will Smith anyway. He didn't turn out to be the worst part of the movie for me. He wasn't very good, but the worst part of the movie for me was the bad guy that played Jafar, because he was just so bland. Yeah. He was not threatening or memorable or anything. He was just some kind of boring guy that sort of talked menacingly. I thought he was really boring.
It was all boring and bland, and the acting all around was not that good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I was a little surprised because Will Smith, it's not like he was good or anything like that. But I expected he'd be the worst part, and I didn't think he was the worst. But of course, I don't like hearing him sing, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, and speaking of Aladdin again, and both Aladdin and Jasmine, they had separate voice artists singing their songs on the original movie.
Yeah. That's true. And then a big thing, too, was a lot of these, then they'd have other versions of the song, like the Cell soundtrack. Like you watch the end credits of Aladdin, and then you get A Whole New World as sung by Celine Dion and whoever that guy was. I don't know who it was, but, well-established pop stars. In the case of something like The Lion King, of course, you have a pop star involved in the writing of the music, Elton John. So you had the movie versions, then you had Elton John singing the songs, too.
Well, and going back to American Tail, they did that even with that one, too.
Yeah. I'll give them credit, though. I mean, that kid could not sing, but they're just like, who cares? It's part of Fievel's character. He's like, in the pale moonlight.
I think it worked for the movie, but I am kind of glad they did, because it is a good song, or a nice song that they did have professionals.
Who is it that sings at the end? I probably said it when I watched it, but I can't remember now.
Who is it? It's not Linda.
Linda Ronstadt? That sounds right. That sounds right. When you said it, I jumped on it, but maybe I'm wrong.
I'm gonna have to look at it. Where are you?
This looks so good. I miss that there isn't this kind of stuff nowadays, except like in animes. Like there should be more stuff like this. I look at the detail of the palace and everything. Looks so good.
Yep, Linda Ronstadt and James Ingram.
Right, James Ingram.
But you're right, and I don't understand why Disney isn't producing hand-drawn animation.
I mean, I got so excited when they did Princess of the Frog just because I thought it was a comeback. They were like, nope, never doing that again.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was successful. And I thought
it was successful too. I mean, it wasn't an amazing movie, but it was good.
Wasn't amazing, but yeah, one of their better hand-drawn movies in almost a decade, I think.
Because, I mean, I get it. Their last few before that were not good. But that's not... And again, it's the same thing as what I was saying about the Black Cauldron thing, is I think Disney learned the wrong lessons from that. Like, they thought Black Cauldron flopped because they went darker and made it PG and things like that, and that's not why it flopped. No. It flopped because the characters sucked and it had barely any story, and because Jeffrey Katzenberg cut the shit out of it. That's why it flopped. But they read that, and I think they also read the wrong things about there. Like, they did, like, Home on the Range and some other bullshit. They're like, which just weren't good movies. But they were like, no, and they were like, hand drawn, that's going out. Like, screw hand drawn. You know, they blamed the medium for the bad movie, for the quality of the movie. Which, yeah.
Well, didn't they get to the point to where they were pumping them out every year too? And it used to be they'd wait a couple years and really focus on.
I mean, it'd be about a year, because they would usually have multiple teams working on them at the same time. Because I mean, there were very few. That's one of the things about the turmoil of the '80s, is like the '80s actually had a couple years where they didn't have them.
Yeah.
Black Cauldron was supposed to be out for like '83, and that was going to be Christmas '84, and then it finally came out in like the summer of '85. But because they used to be able to at least fill in between, because like they did The Great Mouse Detective in '86, which was just a small movie, modest success. Then they didn't have a movie for '87. And then they did Oliver and Company in '88, which again was kind of small. And then things really got going with Little Mermaid in '89. And that was sort of the Disney Renaissance era, where it was all hits until about '96, '97. That's another reason why I feel bad about Pocahontas, was because I saw all these movies starting with Little Mermaid. I saw all those movies in the theater in a row. And the first one to really not be that good, I thought, was Pocahontas. And for years, I thought it was a weak movie. I watch it now, it's not really a weak movie. It just wasn't on the same level as the movies before it.
I 100% agree. That's funny you say that. That's where it started cutting off for me, too. And then we rewatched it this past year, my family and I, both Man and I were like, oh, this is a lot better than I remembered it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's pretty good. I'll need to watch it again. Luckily, I have Disney Plus, so I can revisit all that stuff. The last animated Disney movie I watched was at the end of the decade, was Tarzan. That was '99. And Tarzan wasn't very good. And Disney was just sort of running out of steam. But I mean, I probably will eventually, may even get Jay to do a show on Atlantis, because Atlantis is another really sort of interesting failure. There's a lot of interesting things to say about Atlantis. So she's having some sort of like flashback of her past life, I guess. She was a Grand Duchess. That would have been her title, not princess, because she was young. She was the youngest of the sisters, so she was a Grand Duchess. But it's not like things were all great for them even before the revolution started. Her mother, Alexandra, was not well liked by the people. One, she wasn't Russian, which is not really that big of a deal when it comes to European monarchs, because the whole point is connecting everybody. She was actually, she was a minor German princess, and she was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria. And anybody who knows anything about that era knows that Queen Victoria was basically Europe's grandmother, and that you can look at all the royalty of all the various European countries, and they are all related in some way to Queen Victoria. She was quite directly related by being a granddaughter. But one of the things is, when you get all that inbreeding and stuff going, is that sometimes it leads to bad genes. And Alexandra carried the hemophiliac, which she passed on to
hemophilia.
Yep. Which she passed on to her son, which would have been a big succession crisis, if not for, of course, the revolution wiping out the Tsars.
They eventually did start figuring out that they better go to some extended family members for marriage and beyond.
But as far as from what I've read, Alexandra was a nice person, but she was shy, which a lot of the people took to mean she was aloof and snobby, which she wasn't at all, which is too bad. They say that Anastasia wasn't much like her mother, that she was more outgoing and had more of sort of a sense of humor, and was kind of I don't want to go so far as say, like, I don't know, like a tomboy or anything like that, but, you know, she was more outgoing, and she liked to play around and joke. So I don't know why she's wandered in here, but she's having weird kind of flashbacks, and these guys, they don't believe that she's Anastasia at this point, but they think this is a story that they can spin and maybe profit from, is what's happening here. I can't even remember why she wants to go to Paris. It's like, yes, we'll all go to Paris for some reason. I mean, another thing the people held against Alexandra was that she didn't speak French very well. And French was the official language of the Russian court. It had been for centuries. So, yeah, there were all sorts of expectations on you if you were royalty.
I don't think I was aware of that either.
Yeah. Right. So here they are saying, yeah, you know, We can convince the people that you're Anastasia. I don't know if they're trying to. I can't remember if they're. Yeah, they don't want to make her in on the scam, so they're just saying for sure. They're trying to convince her for real. Oh yeah, you could be her, and that she's got family in Paris supposedly. So okay, that's what it is.
Yep.
Okay, so they are Dmitri. That's the younger guy, John Cusack, and Vlad. Some nice Russian names. Anastasia means she will rise again. Okay, I didn't know that. No, they're giving her the proper title there, Grand Duchess. Honestly, I don't think it would be very safe to be Anastasia in the 20s. Wouldn't the government just lock her up or make her disappear? Like, it's not like now that it's been a few years since the revolution, everything is stable and great, and if a member of the royal family emerged, everybody would be great with that. That wouldn't be good at all.
Just say everything was stable and great in Russia?
Well, I just mean it's not like everything was, right?
My
point is, like, it's not like it would actually be that good if Anastasia really was alive for her to step forward and say who she was.
You're really right, yeah.
But that still didn't stop people from, at the time, really trying to profit on it. Particularly Anna Anderson, but there were others that followed.
To me, that would be just too risky trying to impersonate somebody like that. Like you said, even if it really was her coming out.
Well, I mean, back in the days before things like DNA, one of the things that you could really do was, particularly if it was nobility or royalty, is they had those, what are they called? Like those writs or whatever they're called. Anyway, those things you could write up. And
basically
the thing about
paperwork.
Yeah, they had an official name, but the big thing was, if people were good enough, they could forge them. So there were a lot of these people that came forward. They knew somebody or themselves were good at the forgery. So that was their ticket. They thought, I'll use these papers, which apparently Anastasia had on her when she was like gunned down in a basement. She still managed to have her papers with her. But yeah, that became a whole thing.
God, what were those called? I'll let you say that.
Yeah, I have to look into that.
Something in nobility, right?
Yes, that sounds right.
I think there's something before that. A patent of nobility?
That must be it. But anyway, like, people were good at forging those, so there were a lot of people, various fraudsters that would come forward and use that and try to bluff their way with it. What is going on here?
Some craziness.
I look down for a few seconds and I've got a bat flying through the multiverse.
And here's some of the early CGI you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, some looks good, some not so good. There's a bit with like a chandelier that I don't think we missed yet that looks like so different from the rest of the movie.
Yeah, that didn't look so bad.
Yeah. So Rasputin is in some sort of like weird underground lair, because that's where bad guys go.
Pretty standard, really.
So at this point, of course, the world thinks he's dead too. Although for different reasons. Although I guess it's the same thing. They think he drowned. Of course, I guess in this timeline, he would have lived 2 years later. Kind of a negligible difference, I suppose.
Yes.
Oh, his mouth just fell off. I don't remember this trippy stuff. I wonder how many voices Hank Azaria went with before he decided on this one.
Well, until you mentioned something, I forgot it was him.
Yeah. He's like, Master, we got to go to Paris and see about Anastasia. That's the voice he's doing. That's the shtick. Okay, so he is technically dead. So they're saying he's like undead. Okay. They're not saying he like lived. They're saying he's in like some sort of state of undeath. Very nice, because he's like his body's falling apart.
Okay.
Hank Azaria is not even the first person to play an annoying bat comedic character in these movies. Do you remember Fern Gully, that atrocity?
Robin Williams?
Yeah. So in 1992, my sister and I, my sister's 3 years older than me, so she would have been 12, I would have been 9, went to see Beethoven. And it's the only time in my life I can remember going to see a movie and it being sold out. And we didn't have any other options because we were little kids, so we had to go see Fern Gully. So I've always hated that movie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was so excited for it at the time, I think, because loved Robin Williams. And yeah, when we finally got to watch it.
He does rapping, he raps as the bat. And there's one of those movies that became popular too in the 90s with it had an environmental message, which is nice, but like a really lazy one that in no way is applicable.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a kid and you go see Fern Gully, what's it really teaching you about like conservation or environmentalism? You just come out feeling good about yourself because you're like, well, I don't cut down trees in Brazil.
Yeah.
So I'm doing okay. So it doesn't, I mean, I get it. When you're doing a kid's movie, you can't get too complicated or into the details, but you could give something more than these guys are greedy and they're cutting down the trees. I mean, in a way, I guess that does sum it up, but still, yeah. I mean, it's around the same time that what Ted Turner made the Captain Planet show. That's one of the many shows I watched in my youth. And I'm sure you did the same thing. It's like, I knew it was bad even as a kid, but I just sort of watched it out of habit. So I did watch it out. I also thought the European girl who said wind was pretty. Can't remember her name, but
I don't either. I do remember watching it.
But I had a bit of a crush on her.
There's moments of that, though, and I think that's where I feel like they almost shoved a lot of things down your throat, and they really weren't teaching you, like you said, a full lesson. But the 90s
was a very unsettled decade. Everything was extreme and in your face,
Yeah.
Here's our standard villain song talking about how he's gonna take over the world and his weird hellscape that he lives in. Look at this place with giant bugs. I guess they're bugs. I don't know.
Look like beetles or roaches, or
it's like he's in what's the word I'm looking for? Purgatory.
Scorpions.
Mm.
And his bong that those green bats fly out of.
Yeah. Kind of like a weak thing of that part Night on Bald Mountain in Fantasia. Except that was actually awesome and scary. That's my favorite Disney animated movie, by the way, Fantasia. It stands above them all.
Really?
Yep.
I mean, I enjoy it. It's brilliantly animated. The music's fantastic, but
yeah, it's still my number one. So they are on the train to Gay Paris. I don't know, if I ever became a rich weirdo, I would love to have one of these train trips across Europe where everything's early 20th century like this. I like that aesthetic. Want to go on the Orient Express.
I think it would be really cool to go in a nice private car, but a nice sized one.
Yeah.
But they're definitely not worth the price for something like that if you're...
I mean, trains in general, I guess just because it's barely via rails here, and if I wanted, I could go down to the station and hop on a train to go to Montreal, but it would cost me $600. I'm just in what way is this better than flying, you idiots?
It's exactly what I've just dealt with this past year, wanting to go see family halfway across the country, and I'm looking up private cars thinking, it's the best way to travel during COVID and whatnot.
Right,
and
but
it would have cost us $8,000 for a couple of rooms round trip because you have to pay for every train you hop on.
Oh my God.
And it was I could fly first class for a fraction of this.
Mm. And I mean, I don't like flying. I would love a better opportunity, I mean, sometimes you have to fly because of distance or time or whatever, but yeah, if I had the option, I would want the train, but they're not making it easy by jacking up the price like that.
No.
And I get it, the industry, it's not what it was because of flying, but I don't know.
Yeah, but you're definitely not going to get, like you just said, my money because just doesn't make sense.
No.
Why would I
pay so much
the amount
for like a longer trip. Because I mean, I get like some of it's scenic. Like, again, it would be great to go to like parts of Western Canada. There's a really great route that will take you like through like to show you the Rocky Mountains and all that. It sounds awesome. I'd love to do it, but
it'd be beautiful, but the cost.
Yeah. Like, in order for that to even be feasible, I'd have to like fly. I'd probably have to fly out west first and then take the train. And then wherever the train stops, fly back here. God knows what that would entail.
Yeah, and even if you look for like coach seats on a train, they're still pretty astronomical in price.
Right, because I mean that's what I was looking at when I was looking at the Montreal thing. I was just looking for an ordinary coach seat, and like I said, something like $650 or something like that.
I believe it.
I mean, I don't know.
But sitting on a train like this in a car like this on Anastasia here, that would be cool.
Yeah. There's some things from the 20th century that are gone that I feel like I missed out on. And when you're born in the wrong era, this is sort of one of them. Because it feels like we're almost going backwards in that way. Because again, these people aren't rich. They're just using what they have, and they're still traveling in pretty nice comfort and style here. Nowadays, you look at trains and you see all those shots of like people in India where they're on the outside of the train because there's no room to even stand in it, right? It's like we're going backwards. Now a train ticket means, you can be on the train physically in some way, but you don't get a seat, you don't get a drink, you don't get a roof over your, I don't know. I mean, I know that's not here, that's India with its insane population. Still, I'm like, how far off are we?
But still, it's not far.
And I mean, I haven't flown in forever, and I don't want to be the millionth person to make the observation that flying sucks in a post 9/11 world. But my God, I hated it so much.
It's awful.
You go to
I'm
the
not
airport,
a fan of traveling, period. But
they make you take your shoes off like you're some criminal.
Shoes, your belt, empty your pockets.
I mean, I just did a not too long flight, and of course, the whole thing here in Canada is how stupid it is. Because I mean, the last time I flew was when I went to New York City. Halifax is closer to New York than Toronto, but I had to fly to Toronto to go to New York, and the same way to come home, which is just asinine.
It is.
It makes no sense.
We have similar things here. It's wherever that airline's hub is for some reason, but it makes no sense to go clear over Texas to get to the East Coast.
Yeah. The Halifax airport is still technically an international airport, but they downgraded it years ago as if it's not. So it's like almost anywhere you want to go internationally is through Toronto, but even just it's so dumb. It's like, why? Toronto's like more in the middle of the country, so it's so stupid. It was just so uncomfortable. No space. And I really feel for people because I'm small. I'm not tall. I'm not heavy. So I don't know. And I feel so claustrophobic, like sitting in a plane and things like that. So I don't know how somebody who's like, 6'4", well over 200 pounds, how they must feel.
Yeah, I'm just under 6, and I'm not like a super huge guy. But yeah, I think the same thing when I'm sitting in these seats. How even somebody just slightly bigger than me can fit in any comfort there. It's unfortunately still the best way to travel because it's the quickest.
Yeah.
And as far as money, it's most economical if you're traveling far.
Yeah. So the Hellbats have blown up part of the train.
See that? Separated
them. I guess their car has been separated from the main train. So we have to have like sort of an action scene here. They decided to make Anastasia a bit of a kind of a redhead. Historically speaking, she was not, but no big deal there. She was more a kind of a dirty blonde, from what I've heard.
Oh.
But this movie is not exactly historically accurate. And neither is actually the 1956 movie it's based on either. Although at least that one, as far as I know, does not have anything about Rasputin in it. Because in this, they have the whole idea that like instead of like the Bolsheviks taking over and executing the family, the thing was like, Rasputin uses powers to make the people attack them. Fine, okay. But I don't want things too heavy for the kids watching. Pretty dramatic. Looks good though. Destroyed the bridge and everything. Rasputin is upset. The snow is really blowing out there.
Wow, you're getting snow?
Yeah, but it's typical of the way things have been for the last few years here. Is like that. Yeah, we're getting quite a bit of snow. Stuff might even be canceled tomorrow. But on Saturday, it's supposed to get really warm and rain, so it'll wipe it all out, which is too bad. But that's basically what winters are like here the last 10 years or so. You might get snow, but it never lasts because it warms up. When I was a kid, it was a lot colder. I mean, people talk about climate change and global warming. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. Things were a lot colder and snowier when I was a kid. Now we've got messy winters, but much more mild.
Oh.
So when we get snow, it rarely lasts. I mean, we'll get some that lasts when it gets into January, February, but right now it's still pretty warm. I mean, I think last Christmas was warm as hell.
Last Christmas was mild for us, and it's been pretty mild, knock on wood, right now. But a couple of years ago, we had some bad, just from November to April, snowstorms, ice storms, freeze your face off in 5 minutes.
What's funny is, like, I don't live that far from where I grew up. I grew up in Sydney. My parents live there, and that's only about 4 or 5 hours away by car. And I remember a couple of years ago, it snowed here at Christmas, and everything looked good. But then the rest of the winter was sort of typical. It would snow, it would rain, it would be on and off. But from, like, the day after my parents brought me back to Halifax after being there for Christmas, it snowed there. And they remained buried in snow until well into April. Like, not only did it never warm up and rain, but, like, more snow just kept coming.
Piling on, yeah.
So, and that was like maybe 2 years ago. So that was like a big outlier because we've been trending in, you know, less snow every year. And then just, I think it was 2019. I want to say it could have been 2018. Maybe it was Christmas 2018 into the rest of 2019, something like that. But yeah, Sydney was just buried in snow. I couldn't believe the difference because we'd have days where there was just nothing here. And my parents were showing me pictures of like feet of it outside, which again is more like my memories of childhood. The snowiest I remember is the winter of 97, 98. Because I remember in March of 98, we had our March break. And then like we still didn't go back to school for like almost 2 weeks after that because there was so much snow. I just remember every day going out and, you know, I was already like 15 at this time, but still I was going to play in the snow. And we were making forts and stuff like that because the whole neighborhood was just buried. Ryan was there. I don't know if you know, Ryan and I grew up together. He lived 2 doors down from me.
I knew you were pretty close, but yeah, I haven't had the pleasure of being on a stream with Raiho yet.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we've always been outliers in that. I know a lot of people that I've know on here, they've met and stuff, but Ryan and I are different because we were always friends. He's the reason why I did anything on YouTube in the first place because he did his own channel ages and ages ago, and he encouraged me to do it. So I eventually did it, but back in like 2013, we were doing like maybe it was 2012 or 2013. He did like we were both in Sydney at the same time, which doesn't happen much. We were at his parents' place, and he did a Friday the 13th marathon. And during that, I was like talking to a lot of the people that watched. That included people like Orc and Pizel and stuff. So that's kind of what got me pulled into that.
Cool.
And not too long after that, Pizel had the idea to make the Sausage Factory, and I was really shocked that he wanted me because my channel wasn't about movies or horror movies; it was about comics. But he said he'd, you know, seen me talk enough, and he wanted so it was nice. It was fun. So that's how that got started.
Well, of course, that's where I first saw you guys. And
yeah,
was on the original Sausage Factory a few years back.
So now they're going to do a whole thing here of trying to turn her into the person that she's supposed to be. They're going to try to make her act like an aristocrat and all that, which you've seen in various movies. A good one is The Man in the Iron Mask. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Where they have that whole plan to replace the king with his twin, both played by DiCaprio. So they have this whole thing where they're trying to teach Philippe how to be like the king, teach him the etiquette. Still love that movie. It's one of the best soundtracks of any movie. God, that's a great soundtrack. So there's another song. The animals gather around her in Disney princess fashion.
Another one that comes to mind, not exactly the same, but A Knight's Tale.
Yep.
I don't know.
But what's funny about that is that involves, remember, they get him in by doing forging like documents, right?
Yes, that's right.
The whole thing is they forge those like writs or whatever they are of nobility for in the medieval world so that he gets accepted to be a real knight. Yeah, I haven't seen the movie in years, but it always sticks out to me because it was one of like the first dates I went on with a girl. It was kind of vivid in my mind at the time. It was the second movie we ever saw. The first date we went to see has another tie to this. Wrong era, but it was Russia, and it was the same year, 2001. It was Enemy at the Gates. That was the first movie we saw together. We saw Enemy at the Gates, which was kind of an awkward first date movie for teenagers because it has that sex scene where they just have sex in the middle of all those people. And yeah, and the second movie, we saw a bunch.
And that was the first one you watched together?
With her. Yeah, that was my first date with her. Yeah, I mean, we went to a ton of movies because that was the main thing we did. She was still in high school when I was in college. And so in 2001, 2002, we went to a lot of movies. So I saw a lot of movies in 2001, 2002, including a lot of bad movies that I went to just to go to. So I could go on a date with her. But I lost track of their order. But I remember the very first one was Enemy at the Gates. And the second one was A Knight's Tale. Knight's Tale makes me sad because, I mean, there's lots of movies, obviously, that have, what's his name in them?
Heath?
Yeah, Heath Ledger. I mean, but that's the first movie where I knew who he was. So I guess that's why it makes me sad. It was sort of like this, I think it might have been his first starring role.
Was it that or the 10 Things I Hate About You?
Oh, yeah.
That kind of teen comedy, drama, love story, whatever.
Yeah, because he'd been in movies before that. He was in, I think it's a really bad movie, but people like it. The Mel Gibson movie, The Patriot. He's like the oldest son in that.
I always forget that he is in that, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not the lead character. In fact, I think he gets killed. I'm always really conflicted about movies that are like doing historical things because not everything has to be 100% accurate. It's okay to bend things and change things sometimes, but I think some things you just can't change and are unforgivable.
Agreed.
And I feel like that's another thing they did in that movie. Like, I get it. You're framing the British as the bad guys. But they have this whole thing where the British commander, like, burns a church down and slaughters his family. It's like, none of that happened. Like, there's no reports of anything like that happening during the war, the Revolutionary War. But again, they wanted to make him look bad. It's just like when they did, when Michael Bay did the Pearl Harbor movie. He made a point of showing the Japanese planes like bombing the shit out of the hospital. It's like they didn't do that, but so I get it, artistic license, but sometimes things like that bother me because I think artistic license works for some things, but some things you just have, if you're going to do a historical movie, you have to follow some of these facts.
Well, and especially when there's enough juice in the actual story.
Yeah, like you don't really need. That's what I mean.
You don't fabricate stuff.
Yeah, and I guess that's really what it is. I mean, in something like this, I get it. This is a loose remake of a movie that's loosely based on facting fiction. And I get this is an animated movie for kids. We're not going to get into all the weighty stuff of the political situation in Russia in the early 20th century, the Bolsheviks and the October Revolution and all this stuff. I get that. And it is kind of convenient. Like the funniest part about this movie is like, as much as obviously he's fictionalized, Rasputin was real. And it was like, this is perfect. We'll just take all the shit people said about Rasputin, pump it up, and make him into a crazy wizard, and he'll just be the main villain for everything, Because I mean, Rasputin is a real historical character that sounds like he's made up because it's so weird. But there you go. Dancing on a boat. Oh, look, they're starting to fall for each other. But come on now, she's just your mark. You're just using her, right?
Stick to business, young lad.
Yeah. Ooh, we're even getting a nice Indiana Jones map thing.
I was just thinking that how many movies have done that?
Whether I'm glad,
a boat or a plane or even a car.
See, another thing that matters to me in movies like this, and just is having a sense of geography. to me, it's really important. Like I'm not trying to be a snob because I'm saying everybody has to like look at globes and maps and memorize everything. It's not like I know everything, but I'm really honestly baffled by people that don't seem to even have vague ideas of where things are in relation to each other. That would drive me nuts to like just like have no idea. Like, well, if you want to go to Turkey, you go to the east. You know, like something really vague like that. I don't know where Turkey is. Is it in South America? Like, I want to shoot myself talking to people like that.
Oh, dude, it gets worse than that. People in their own country who don't know states that are close to them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that? Yeah.
And that's the thing I always say, not just to Americans, Canadians too, but more so Americans. When I talk about where I'm from, Nova Scotia, I always say, you know what? Nova Scotia might be small and not like have much of a population or anything like that, but it is geographically distinct. You look at any map of the world and you can see where we are. Like, but good luck finding Iowa because it's just a bunch of made up lines. You know, we aren't just defined by made up lines. So that's why I'm annoyed when people say they don't know where Nova Scotia is. I'm like, you can see it even on a map of the world. You can see it. Whereas, like, if you're going to look for various states, it's harder because some of them, the only thing that separates them are the lines on a map. You have too many states, by the way. I've said this many times. There's too many. 50, like, it just felt like they were padding to get to 50 because 50 is a cool number.
50 is a good number to, yeah.
I think several states should combine, but oh well. I guess that ship has sailed.
Oh no. They shouldn't combine, but there definitely shouldn't be any more added.
Don't split them into more.
Yeah, no, that either.
Unless any want to like leave the country and make their own country, which they did try to do once.
Yeah, I think most of those it would be a mistake though for them.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, it was a mistake then. She's having some weird butterfly dreams here.
I know, that was tripping me out of the corner of my eye.
Oh, they're on a boat in the Baltic Sea. That's right. Going back to the map.
Reminded me of the three fairies in Sleeping Beauty for a second.
That's one of my favorite of the old school ones. I love the art style in that movie so much.
Oh, it's magnificent.
What's cool is I grew up with the Canadian version of Disney Channel called Family Channel back when it was a pay channel, and it educated me on all this stuff. Like, it showed those movies like way before anything like Disney Plus ever existed. I'd seen all the like Mickey, Donald, Goofy shorts. It showed all that stuff. And
so was this Family Channel? Was it actually the Disney Channel?
Yeah, it was just called
because
Family
the Disney
Channel.
I had it in the 80s too, and it was a pay channel.
Yeah. This was just the Canadian version. It had mostly the same programming with a few little tweaks, like some things for Canadian. But it was the same idea. It was a pay channel, and it showed like actual Disney movies, including a lot of those forgotten ones. Like, I grew up watching so many of those animal movies. You know the ones I mean, live action animal movies that might not even have real characters. Maybe just a narrator talks while animals do stuff. Yes. I love movies like that. One movie was all about a coyote that got chased out of the forest and was living in Beverly Hills. And I loved it. Like, the only character was a coyote. It was a coyote running around in Beverly Hills. But anyway, so
they call those. I remember, yeah, there's a lot of those.
So one thing that was cool is they often showed like weird, cool special things, which was way before DVDs and stuff like that. So I remember not only watching Sleeping Beauty, but they had all these cool extra features. And there was this really great thing about Sleeping Beauty. They took 3 of the artists that were involved, like I think they were storyboard artists, that had worked on Sleeping Beauty. And they had this feature, and this, of course, it's like 1959. And they took them all to like some sort of like park area. And they put them on like different parts of a hill. And the hill all looked down on this one tree. And the idea was each from their own perspective, they would sketch and paint the tree. And I remember being a little kid and being so fascinated with this idea. It was probably the first time I got the idea of like artists sort of interpreting things differently. They're all looking at the same tree, but they all draw it very differently.
Very differently.
And like many, many years later, I got the DVD of that, and it's on there as a special feature. It made me so happy.
Awesome. I used to love watching the behind the scenes stuff of those too back then. It was fascinating.
Yeah. So again, this is another show that I made Jay do, which is very similar because also is black in the title, was the other Disney flop, which was The Black Hole, which came out in 1979, which was sort of, again, them trying to do a PG movie and capitalize on Star Wars, and it was a big flop. What's funny about that is all that stuff that aired on TV about it in 1979 got shown on Family Channel, like in like 1990 or whatever. And at the time, I didn't know when it was from, but the idea was like, it's an upcoming movie. It's The Black Hole, and it was called Major Effects, and you can find part of it, but not all of it on YouTube, and I had it taped. And it was all about, and what's funny is like one of the guys who was who was an actor in the movie. I didn't even notice that. He played a guy in a super hero costume. He called himself Major Effects, and he talked about all the effects used in Disney movies. So it would show, and it was like a montage, and you'd go back and show movies like like The Love Bug and stuff like that, and all those animal movies. I loved that. But at the time, like, I didn't know if the black hole was coming out or if it was new or it was old. Like, I didn't know. It wasn't until years later that I sort of found context for it. I had a little golden book too of the black hole. Remember the little golden books?
And I remember the black hole, but just like you're saying, for us, especially now without the internet, you didn't know necessarily if a movie was well done, if it was old or new.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
They were talking, it was a broadcast from obviously 79, but there's nothing telling me that. Like, I know things looked a little older, but again, this is only 10 or 11 years before that. So I was like, is this a movie that's coming out? Is kind of what I thought, because that's the way it was broadcast. And that was how I learned the song Paper Moon, because they did like a parody of Paper Moon. And the whole idea was that they changed the lyrics to explain how various effects worked. And it's like, it's only a plaster cliff. But the whole thing was like, it's only Paper Moon sailing over a cardboard sea. It's kind of funny. So this must be Angela Lansbury, who I guess survived and has gone into hiding. I don't know. I really don't remember what the bit is here. Yeah, so they are talking about how in real, like what happened in real life, that there were quite a few people claiming to be Anastasia. Okay, so her grandmother or whatever is living in Paris. Yeah, so the whole thing is they don't believe for a second she's the real Anastasia, and they think they're going to scam people by playing her off as if she's Anastasia. But the thing is, she really is. And it is true that in the wake of the revolution, a lot of Russian aristocrats did leave the country and go to places like Paris, because you did not want to be an aristocrat in Soviet Russia. They kind of...
Yeah.
Because the thing is, even after the Romanovs were killed, more killings happened.
Oh, yes.
Oh, the dog wasn't allowed in.
I'm still here. I'm just flipping my camera off for a second.
Yep. Ooh, a sundial. Seen one of those in a while. Seems the only time characters with large breasts appear in animated movies, it's played off for laughs. And it's usually like some middle-aged woman. Like, she's actually fairly attractive for a big-breasted animated character.
Oh, yes.
Like, I've done this spiel too many times, people are sick of it, but I mean, it's true. They would never make like a Disney princess or a main female character with large breasts in animation, which I think sends the wrong message. But at the same time, like, it's because of how people will perceive it, which I'm like, does that mean? Because people are like, what are those perverts at Disney doing? Drawing a girl like that. And I'm just like, well, girls like that exist, though. You're making it sound like you're either erasing them or, they're just dirty and shameful people because because of how they're endowed. So if you're going to be like a lead Disney character, a young female, they're never ever going to have noticeably large breasts.
Well, you would say that, like with Bluth compared to Disney, I think his human characters were much better than the average Disney human character.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do a lot of human characters, but
I guess not too many, but when you see him,
I think he was better at probably doing ordinary people.
Yeah.
Like the non-princes and princesses and stuff like that. Like he seemed to, I think he did have a better grasp of like everyday people. Maybe. Which Disney used to be good at in the older movies. And then that's another thing they kind of got away from, I guess, in a way.
Very true. For a while there, I thought they looked quite cartoonish. That, like you said earlier, though. It is a cartoon, but...
Mm-hmm. So is this actually happening, or is this a hallucination? I guess it's actually happening.
It's actually happening with that one exception or shot there.
It's like we're going to take her out and show her to the world. Another song. For some reason, a lot of Disney movies are in Paris. Or at least France. Beauty and the Beast is in France. Ratatouille's in Paris. There's more. Hunchback of Notre Dame, of course, set in France.
Oh, yes. I almost forgot about that one.
Paris. That's a really good one. That kind of gets overlooked. I guess maybe because a lot of people like myself were kind of disappointed with Pocahontas, but I mean, they really sort of bounced back. Which is easily, I think, their most dark and serious movie is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's kind of amazing how well they do for like a children's movie adopting something so, serious, a novel by Victor Hugo. And that whole villain song is like the darkest thing Disney's ever done. When you have Frollo, or whatever his name is, he sings a song about how he's a member of the clergy, and what he's supposed to do is be moral and upright. And he's supposed to be an example to everybody. And he hates the gypsies because to him, the gypsies are like the opposite of all that. They're immoral and they're terrible. But he's conflicted because Esmeralda, he sexually desires her. Like, what the hell? And he even sings about hell. It's called like Hellfire. It's like crazy. I mean, I love that they did it, but it's kind of crazy when you think about it. This guy is singing about how he's conflicted about his like religious duty versus like his animal lust. Like, it's crazy.
Disney. Now that was the one right after Pocahontas.
Yeah, it was 96.
So it was that, then Hercules, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty good at these. And then Mulan, and then Tarzan. I still haven't watched the live action Mulan either because I'm sure it'll disappoint me. But unlike the others, it looks like they took all comedic aspects out of it. It doesn't look like there's any comedy in this Mulan. Like, obviously there's no Eddie Murphy dragon, and I don't think they try to like make up for it. It just looks like they're just going to do the straight story Mulan.
To me, then what's the point? Because
I know, because especially if you're Chinese, because if you're Chinese, there are a lot of Mulan movies. Like maybe people don't know that Mulan is a story that's been told many, many times in many different ways, and that Disney was just one more version.
That is one I did know. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like what is the point? If it doesn't have that much of a connection to the original. Exactly. I mean, I guess I'll eventually get around to watching it.
See, I don't know if I will. I'm in the same boat as you, except. Yeah, I don't know.
And I usually don't care about what actors say and stuff, but I was annoyed when that really pretty actress decided to like be another. And I get it; it's a much harder being like a Chinese actor considering the government situation there. But she really didn't have to come out and like say like she like supports like total. She didn't say she supports that, but I mean she was saying like I'm on Hong Kong police side, right? She's like I support the police. Those people are just troublemakers. Like that's not a good look.
Just entertain me, please.
And I get it. Again, it's a precarious position to be in, to be any sort of like known figure in China.
Yeah, maybe she didn't have a choice. At least in her mind.
Right. And that's why I feel bad that sometimes people are so hard on individuals for that and talk about the Chinese as like they're all enemies. And like, let's not conflate that like citizens with like the government.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
Because I remember not too long ago, a Chinese fighter was fighting in MMA. Was fighting for the strawweight championship against Rose Namajunas. And everything, and Rose was supposed to be known for being like not a trash talker and a nice person. But then while she was talking about the fight, she just suddenly threw out like, well, better dead than red, right? And all this stuff. And I'm like, come on, Rose, that's such a mean thing to say. Like, and this fighter, Zhang Zhui or whatever her name was, sorry, I'm probably getting it wrong there, but I mean, she wasn't like going out of her way, like making grand pronouncement about China or the government. She was just shutting her mouth and being a fighter. And it was Rose that brought politics into it. No,
there's no reason for that.
There was just no reason to do that. But yeah, I just mean, if you're like an athlete or an actor and you're working abroad, like how much can you say, you know? And how many of them are like pressured to be mouthpieces? Like, I mean, for years, Jackie Chan's been like, you know, very much towing the line. And I don't know if that's because he believes it or because he didn't, you know, was against it, but at some point came to believe it because they used him for so long. I don't know. But I mean, I don't want to make any judgments about Jackie Chan, but at the same time, if you look back at his career track record and things he said, well, it makes it sound like, yeah, he's just very pro all that, which is kind of annoying, but you wonder how much of a choice he had, at least initially. And even stuff with like Russians and stuff too.
Well, like you said, it's hard to tell with the governments like they are.
You know, you're like, there's some like famous Russian like hockey players in the NHL, and you'll see like there's like photos of them like posing with Putin or something. Am I supposed to hate them now? Like, what choice do they friggin' have? Are they supposed to say, "Fuck off, Putin"? That's not an easy thing to do.
No.
You know, Artemi Panarin did, and I think that's great. But I mean, that literally put his family in danger, whether people want to admit that or not. And he's easily the most high-profile hockey player to do it, and I think that's awesome. But that just doesn't mean every other player that doesn't do it is just some sort of Russian stooge. So yeah, I just wish people wouldn't make those sorts of judgments on people because, again, we grew up in free countries where we didn't have to worry about that. Where if the president or prime minister said something to you or I, if we were like
artists, we can say we
could say screw you, you know.
Yeah.
But in some countries, it's really hard to take that position. So yeah, I wish people wouldn't make those sorts of judgments. And again, and also just not judge populaces and citizens of the country by the things their government does. I know I'm sort of biased in a way. I mean, I had a Chinese girlfriend who I loved very much. So I mean, that's always a part of it. I mean, just as a human being, I can separate that, right? Like,
yes.
You know what though? Her father was a government agent. And his job was investigating foreigners.
Oh boy!
So she said, like, if I ever came with her to China, I couldn't like stay at her house with her family because it would look bad. I was like, okay.
Okay. Well, so she's found out.
Yeah, so she's calling him out for being a huckster. And this is where Anastasia finds out, like, oh, he wasn't being serious. I'm just part of a con. Although, no, he is sort of insisting that he really does believe it's her. So I don't know. We've missed some of it. So I don't really know what Dimitri's actually feeling at this point, if he thinks it's the real her or not. But now she's finding out there was a plot just to find a look alike. Yeah. So I guess the thing is, like, it's the same thing.
I think you just said it. That was his original plot, and he didn't believe it at first, but I think he did start to believe it.
Follows that whole thing that happens and stuff like she's all that. It's like it started out as a bet, but now I love you. It's that kind of thing. Yeah, so now we're going to have our all this lost moment here where you used me, and she's going to get mad. It's like, I did, but now I... Yeah, it may have started that way. Yeah, exact same beats. I don't really know why he thinks that, though. We talked through that. I'm not sure what convinced him. Ooh. I mean, this is certainly like the animation style, not just the people, but the architecture and everything. It certainly has a more sort of real world look to it than a lot of the Disney stuff. Because, I mean, even if you look at something comparable like Hunchback of Notre Dame, I mean, architecture, sure, but the characters themselves were drawn a little sort of more exaggerated. And I mean, not just Quasimodo, who of course was a weird looking hunchback, but just even the ordinary people. They were
the regular people.
They were more cartoony looking for the most part.
Yep.
Although not all of them. I mean, obviously, they're like, we've got Demi Moore as a Gypsy Esmeralda, so we'll just make her look really hot. So they did. She's not a Disney princess, but she's up there.
Yeah, that's a whole nother subject. Interesting on what they decipher as a Disney princess and whatnot.
Yeah. And what's funny is the one whose name I can't pronounce from Black Cauldron literally was a princess, and yet she's excluded from that because they just want to bury that movie.
Yes.
Because I'm like, they're just calling other ones that are just more or less lead characters, but they're just slapping the princess thing on them anyway. But she was literally a princess, although it served nothing in the plot. Now, in the books, it probably served the plot, but in the movie, it doesn't matter. She says she's a princess, and then it's never brought up again. Like, she doesn't talk about her kingdom or her people. There's nothing about the political state of the thing. It's just like, I'm a princess, by the way. It doesn't matter. And then you just move on.
But the point is, she is a princess.
But yeah, she is a princess.
And they don't count her.
Yeah. If you look up all the marketing and things that include... Yeah, then she's not there because she's just one of their dirty little secrets. I'm like, come on now, the Black Cauldron.
Just own up to it, Disney.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I want them to own up to Song of the South, so that seems like a much easier thing to do than that.
Thank you.
I don't know why I, as an adult, can't watch Song of the South on Disney Plus. You can put a little disclaimer in front of it. I'm fine with disclaimers. I think they do good work. You know, I get it. I understand it.
Don't try to erase it, though.
Right. And I understand it's more complicated for obviously black people, and I realize that some black people have different opinions on it. For instance, Whoopi Goldberg is on the same side as me. She thinks, you know, that it should be shown and it should be available. Not everybody thinks that way.
Surprising, but not everybody thinks that way. Yeah,
not everybody thinks that way. I get it, but I just mean, I don't know. What's funny is again growing up into that. Yeah, we won't. But growing up with Family Channel, again, I never saw the movie all the way through, but I saw segments of the movie was on Family Channel.
Yeah.
What's funny is one of the segments I saw, which is one of the weirdest things in racist language, was the thing with the Tar Baby. And the funny thing about that is Tar Baby in real life was never actually a racial slur. It just sounds like it was supposed to be one. Tar Baby is from one of the original stories written, I can't remember his name, but by a black author. He made up the whole thing of the Tar Baby. But then people heard it later, like, Tar Baby. Oh, yeah, that's really racist. You know, it's funny.
Not at all.
Yeah,
and most of again, we won't.
But in the context of it, no, not at all.
Most of that film really isn't, and it's
no. There's just a few little things, and I get it. And then there's some stuff
the
like
disclaimer.
Them never really giving an actual historical context to like Remus. Like, when is this? Is he a slave? Is this Reconstruction? Oh, you know, it's never specified. So some of that is just like reading into it. I mean, yeah, you could watch and be like, oh, he's a slave. He's a happy slave. But there's nothing in the movie that says that. That's just you making your own. I don't know. It's just you inferring stuff. What's great is that actor was only 46 when he played that role.
Oh, I know. And I thought he was at least 20 years older. I read that recently.
And I mean, again, people say nowadays things like, you know, when stuff winds up racist, like intent shouldn't matter. I feel like intent has to matter a little. Because I don't think Walt Disney was any saint, and I think he probably was anti-Semitic and a lot of stuff like that. But I mean, the truth is he spoke so glowingly of that actor. He said, I think this is one of the big discoveries. This guy's super talented and he's great. And Disney was upset that he couldn't go to like a premiere in Georgia or something like that. He was a powerful man who was upset about this, saying it wasn't right. So I mean, you have to take these things. It's not all one way or another. There's degrees of it and things like that. Because again, I'm not saying Walt Disney was a perfect human being. He did a lot of shitty things, like when his workers went on strike, labeling them all ungrateful communists. You know, that's not good. But I don't know. So I feel like intent does matter.
Very much so, and that's not excusing ignorance, but
no,
intent does matter.
It has to matter at least a little in context and things like that. Because I mean, one of the things that kicked this off was there was like removing episodes of 30 Rock, which I was watching recently, that like had blackface. And I mean, if you watch the context, the whole point of the context isn't, look, it's blackface. Isn't that hilarious? Like, that's not the context. The context is this particular character is so like ignorant and out of it that they don't realize what they're doing is wrong, and everyone around them is horrified. And yet for some reason it's like, and then they got Tina Fey to go, I realize now intent doesn't matter. It's good you pull it down. I'm like, I don't know.
Similar situation, I think, with The Office. And again, the point wasn't racist at all. It was complete opposite. Just show some ignorance.
It's to point out, you know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I get it. People are stupid. A lot of people are, but that doesn't mean we should all be punished for it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's another thing that sucks about like shows being on streaming, because that's why it's good to buy stuff if you can, like buy DVDs and things like that, because on streaming they'll just decide to pull whatever they want. Oh, this is offensive now, it's gone.
Good point. Physical media, man.
I think they did it with an episode of Community too.
Oh, there's several shows out there,
and that wasn't even blackface
for this reason or that reason. It isn't always just blackface.
Like there's like a Dungeons and Dragons episode of Community where what's his name? Is it Ken? Ken something. You know who I mean. I can't remember if he's Chinese or Korean, but he's an Asian actor. And the whole thing is he's covered his skin and he's got like sort of dark. It doesn't look black though; it's more like a purplish on him, like that. And he says, like, "I'm a dark elf. I'm close to things like a dark elf." And the black character in the room, Shirley, points it out right away, and she goes, "Racist," and he goes, "No." So I mean, one, it isn't racist, but they do show it realistically, and that the black character thinks perhaps it is, and then he explains himself, and they're like, "You know what? Pull the whole episode." Ken
is that Jeong? The Ken from Hangover?
Yeah.
Ken Jeong?
Jeong, yeah. He's a great character in that show. He's completely insane.
Well, and another example is The Simpsons pulling the Michael Jackson episode for different reasons.
Yeah. Again,
off of Disney Plus.
Regardless of what you believe, I don't think we should erase him from history.
Yes.
Michael Jackson's a person that existed and did things, yeah. Same with
Bill
Cosby.
Playing a character, too, yeah. You're going to...
We'll get back to the movie in a second. What's funny, but having watched some episodes of 30 Rock recently, it's funny how they were kind of ahead of the Bill Cosby thing. Because there's this whole part where Tracy Morgan's character, Tracy Jordan, is refusing to, like, come into work for some reason. And they're trying their best to, like, reach him and reason with him to get him to come back. So at one point, Alec Baldwin's character, calls this guy into his office who he knows can do a good Bill Cosby impression. He's like, I'm going to get Bill Cosby, him think he's talking to Bill Cosby, and Bill Cosby, his hero, will convince him to come back to the show. And this is like 2008 or something like that. And so he does the impression, and it's over the phone, and Tracy's like, Bill Cosby, you got a lot of nerve calling me after what you did to my aunt. And he's like, what? He's like, a cocktail waitress in 1973. And he's like, I think you're confusing me with someone else. Like, I'm not confused. He's like, Jack, how dare you make me talk to this man? And it lines up perfectly now.
Wow, yeah, that's fantastic.
Because at the time, I think the joke was just supposed to be that, like, you know, Tracy's like easily suggestible or hysterical, but it's like, no, he knew what he was talking about.
That actually, yeah, a little too close.
Right. So now she's actually been accepted as her for some reason. Now he's going to have his moment where he's upset. Yeah. But yeah, now they're going to do like an unveiling. Again, we've sort of talked through it. So I don't know what it is that convinced people that she's the real deal. But now people think she for sure is the real deal. And now they're going to do some sort of like public unveiling of her or something like that. Now this guy doesn't go bad, does he? Not like evil, but it's like he's just like a jerk who only cares about money. Kelsey Grammer here. I can't remember what happens here. Is Kelsey Grammer still his friend, or is he going to reveal himself to just be a jerk? No, I think he's still his friend. Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're friends. That's good.
Oh, and I got to say, we were talking about Song of the South. I actually did see that. It was in the theaters when I was 5 on Christmas Day. It was the last time it was released in the United States.
Was that 87?
86, I think, even.
Yeah. The first movie I ever saw was Bambi in 87. They did a re-release of that. 87. That's the first one I ever saw in theaters. So that's awesome.
Like Bambi too.
I still think it should be available if you want it, and you give it a little disclaimer talking about blah blah blah, and I think that's good. You don't have to like market it super heavily or be like, it's back, the classic. Like, no, I just mean, come on.
I own a bootleg DVD from Europe I got for my mom about 10 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of those around.
But it's the only way you can see it.
There's a Japanese what's the word? Laserdisc.
Laserdisc. I think that's where this came from, this DVD. It was from the Laserdisc version put onto a DVD.
So we're at about an hour, coming up on an hour and 18 minutes. For anybody who was trying to watch, because I know we veered off a few times.
Yes.
Right, so that is her grandmother, who I think in real life was not alive, but neither was she. So let's not have reality crash in on us now.
Nope, we're past that.
Yeah. Rasputin has less screen time than I remember. I guess it's just because he's so weird. I remembered him more, right? I mean, he's obviously going to play a big part in the finale.
He is, but now that you say that, I remembered him being in it more too.
Yeah,
but
he isn't. A long time. And what's funny is Bardock's not on the screen much either. So why does Bardock get a spin-off movie? It's like, Bardock, he stole your heart in this movie with his 10 seconds of screen time.
Well, like you just said, those we remembered like they were in it more than they actually are on the screen.
Yeah. That effect happens a lot with movies. Puka, that's the dog's name. Oh, of course, there's a hedge maze. Oh, yeah. And something's going to make him come back, obviously. Because he's like, I'm in love with her, I can't handle this, I got to leave. Something's going to make him come back or miss the train or get off the train or something. That's how these things go. Yeah, she's definitely going to get trapped by Rasputin here.
Mm-hmm.
Good news is I think we're past all the songs.
I'm okay with that.
So in real life, as rotten as Rasputin was, and I think he was definitely a con man, and I have no idea if he did anything with the wife or not. I mean, it seems like if he could have, he would have, because he was a horn dog. But by all accounts, he was completely appropriate and normal with the children. Like, he didn't do anything weird or creepy with them. And there was a part where one of, like, the maids complained because she thought it was totally inappropriate that he had access to the nursery and that he shouldn't be around. And she was right, you know. Even if nothing inappropriate happened, you know, probably wasn't appropriate. And she actually got fired probably because of his influence. But, because, I mean, the way I see it is Rasputin, I think, was a bad man. And he was kind of nuts, who probably did believe some things about himself. And I think he definitely knew that he was, you know, in a great position to get money and power and things like that. But I also knew that he probably was smart enough not to rock the boat. Like, he wasn't going to be stupid enough to, like, molest one of the kids or something, whether he wanted to or not, because he had such a good gig, you know. Why mess it up? So,
well, and you may be a really bad person.
These two people really did meet and know each other in real life, but by all accounts, you know, nothing bad happened. He probably shouldn't have been there, and he was probably scamming them, but he only had seemed to have a good relationship with the children, such as it was. But in this, there was no Russian Revolution. It was just all him and his crazy magic, I guess. I don't know. They don't really exactly make it clear. I mean, obviously they point out that her family died and they thought she died, but, you know, they're not going to have any scene of them getting shot in a basement. Crap, so he's back, and I missed why he came back. Because we knew he was going to come back. What the hell made him come back? He just decided, I guess. I thought, like, he would see something or something. Instead, he was just like, you know what, I should go back. Well, good thing you did.
Just watching it, that's kind of how I saw it.
Yeah, I guess he just thought, you know, I should go back. I thought, you know, he might see something or have some object. You know, sometimes that happens in movies, right? They have, like, some sort of moment of realization. But his came without anything external, I guess. Okay, so that's very on Don Bluth there. The big CG horse.
But it's also the time period.
Right. And again, it's Fox Animation Studios, so. I don't even know what his grand plan is here. I mean, if he kills her, that's good, I guess, but does it help him that much? We talk too much, so I don't actually know what his plan is.
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that.
He's like, apparently, according to the story of this, he, like, incited the revolution himself somehow with his magic and got her family killed, but then he died by falling in the river. Then you find out he didn't really die. He's in undeath. So he's come out of his undeath state, finding out one of them survived. He thinks he has to get rid of them, but he hasn't actually profited from their absence. He's just been in hiding in a weird state of undeath. So I don't know. I don't know what his end game is here. I'll kill her and all the Romanovs will be dead. And then I can... What? You're going to depose Lenin? I think you should be going after Lenin. He's the head dog here. But again, I get it. Some characters like Rasputin, because they're so fanciful anyway, they fit well into this. Somebody boring like Lenin wouldn't.
I don't know. You could make him into a pretty fantastic villain.
I suppose.
Cartoonish.
I guess you could with anybody if you tried hard enough. Yeah, and Rasputin at least had his weird, wacky reputation as a mystic. And he really did look like that, right? You've seen pictures of him. He looked absolutely insane. His long hair and beard and his wild eyes like Charles Manson.
Honestly, I haven't, so I'm now going to have to look that up.
Well, if you've seen Charles Manson looks a lot like he did. If you believe in reincarnation, you might think that he was him.
Oh, yes. There's definitely pictures you could confuse that.
That was really coming down. Everything feels Christmassy now. I always complain early in December when people were saying Christmas stuff. I'm like, it's too early. I don't give a fuck. But now that it's really snowing, it feels a little more Christmassy.
See, that's about the only time I want the snow.
Right.
And we don't always get it on Christmas. And then it's hell for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't get it the last couple Christmases. Oh, another uninterrupted kiss. Okay, Rasputin. I missed that. Did he just die? He must have died a Disney death, right? He fell somewhere.
Melted.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's better than just falling. Melted.
Or at least that's what I thought he did.
Yeah.
Unless if I turn my head.
His own magic must have like rebounded against him. I'll have to read later and see exactly what happened. So I don't remember how this ends. Is she going to take her place as Anastasia? What the hell would that even mean in the political climate? It wouldn't be good. So she's just going to run off with him. She's like, I don't care that I'm Anastasia.
On their boat.
Which is really the smarter thing. Because if she came out to the public that she's Anastasia, I mean, luckily she's in Paris. I mean, if she was in Russia, they'd probably just arrest her.
Yeah, she would potentially be in some danger.
Yeah. So it's it is different from a lot of these movies the way they end. Because this is just like, okay, I am the real Anastasia, but who cares? I found something more important, love, blah, blah, blah.
Happily ever after.
Honestly, being Anastasia would be a pain anyway. I mean, the stars have ended.
In the real time period, yeah.
Yeah. Finally, the kiss they teased a million times has finally happened.
Oh.
The dog is repulsed. Like, where was Bardock? I haven't seen or heard anything. Wow, this is a really easy paycheck for what's his name. Oh, there he is. You get last word, do you, Bardock? Or are you just gonna dance? Like, I'm glad my insane master died. Look, I have a girlfriend for some reason.
I was just gonna say, gets girlfriend.
So that's why we got a movie. We had to see what happened with the pink bat.
Sail away. Sail away.
Man. So I missed key parts of that. Not that it really matters.
Oh, me too, but
okay.
It's fun.
Don Bluth and Gary Goldman. Nice. So soon, one way or another, I'll get hold of Land Before Time, and we will do that one. Because that's a big important one, and one I really love. I mean, this movie I'm kind of indifferent to. It looks great, but I don't really, care about the story or characters or music or anything like that. But it looks really great. It's a very beautifully animated movie and a great example. Some of the best non-Disney animation you'll see.
Agree.
Especially of the era. But yeah.
Well, I feel the same way as you on this one. And I was just going to ask you, obviously, Secret of NIMH is your top one. It's my favorite. Bluth. So what
Land Before Time is probably right behind it.
Right, okay. And some of my tops are American Tail, I mentioned earlier. Land Before Time would come around pretty close to the top. And possibly All Dogs Go to Heaven is up there as well.
That's one I really need to watch again because I forget so much of it. Having recently finally watched American Tail again, it's up there for me, but kind of only more by default. Like, I still don't really have strong feelings for it. I like it fine, but I don't have. There's a lot of people of like our generation that like love that movie, and that's fine. I'm not gonna tell them they're wrong or anything like that. But I didn't exactly grow up with Kirsten Dunst was the young Anastasia.
Well, that's key too. I was there. It just kind of I was in the theaters for American Tail. I was
there you go.
The perfect age right there.
Yeah. Its sequel is pretty stupid. Which, of course, Bluth was not involved with. Speaking of sequels, funny, the irony of not being able to find Land Before Time. How many Land Before Time sequels are there? I'm going to look this up. Because it is a lot.
A lot.
It's like,
and that's not mentioning the TV series or little music spin-off. I don't know. My son has the original, of course, and I think it came with part 2, 3, and maybe like 5, some random.
Yeah, 13 direct-to-video sequels. Plus 13? The TV series. 13. So there were 14 films. So I got it right on the money there.
Oh my goodness. But, it's really, to me, not worth past the first film.
No, I mean, I've seen pieces of some of the various sequels throughout time, just little, and they're all crap, forgettable crap. But obviously, Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, who was also a producer on that, was not involved with. Interesting. Gary Goldman's usually a producer, but he was co-director with him on this movie. Oh, Gary Goldman, was he part of the exodus from Disney? I just want to check on that before. Or did he join him later? Yes, he was one of the guys that left when Bluth left Disney at the end of the 70s. He was there with Bluth with Winnie and the Pooh and Tigger 2, The Rescuers, Pete's Dragon, and Robin Hood, which is, by the way, if you don't know, that's my favorite version of Robin Hood ever. Of all the Robin Hoods, my favorite is the Disney 1973 ones. Yeah, it's my favorite. I love that movie. And the only time I like country music, like I don't like country music, but I like it in that movie. It's such a weird idea. It's like, we're going to take Robin Hood and all the characters will be animals. It's like, okay. It also has this weird country bluegrass flavor. It's like, but it's medieval England. It'll work. And it kind of does.
It does. Yeah. I do enjoy that one.
I adore that movie. That's really high for me in the Disney animated canon.
Oh, and another Don Bluth. It's actually a short. It was, I think, one of the last ones before he left Disney was for the holiday season. Small one. I don't know if you know that one at all.
I haven't seen it, but Gary Goldman was also part of that. I know what it is. Oh, yeah, I have seen it. Okay, it's the thing with the mule. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Now, I don't think I liked that one as a child as much, but it's I've caught it on Disney Plus, and it's
one of the ones with more overtly religious because they took it, right sort of from the Christmas Story, which is fine. I don't care. I'm just saying
it works, but it really doesn't shove it down your face either. I enjoyed it, and it's a short, so that it's also not hard to keep your attention.
It's 26 minutes, which is longer than a lot of shorts. That actually makes it longer than, say, like Disney's Christmas Carol, which was a big part of my childhood.
Wasn't that about 25 minutes? That's one of my favorites too, Mickey's Christmas Carol.
And again, not to go off a huge tangent, but as somebody who's a big fan of like the Disney Ducks and the comics, like which of course is just a huge part of comics, was most notably Carl Barks, who invented Scrooge and did all these comics, and going back to like the 40s all the way, into the 70s and all that stuff, is that, okay, I grew up watching Family Channel, so I grew up watching DuckTales, but I didn't know anything about Disney comics or the history or Carl Barks, right? I didn't know that, like, at one point he was the most read author on earth. That's true. Like, and back then Disney didn't credit writers or artists for comics, so his name wasn't even on anything. But during World War II, when American soldiers went abroad, they took their comics with them. So people all over the world, he's part of the reason why anime looks the way it does. People say, how come in anime everybody, like, it looks like Caucasian? It's because people like Osamu Tezuka, who's like the god of manga, and people like him were so inspired by Barks, they copied his style, which is why he didn't draw characters looking particularly Asian, which is something that continues to this day. But anyway, I didn't know any of that as a little kid, and I always thought that at some point, I thought that Scrooge McDuck was made up. I thought he was created for Disney's Christmas Carol, which came out in 1983. For years, I had no idea that, no, Carl Barks invented him back in the fucking 40s, and he's always been around. I thought he was invented for Disney's Christmas Carol, and then they spun that off into DuckTales, which is not true at all. DuckTales was kind of a spin-off of his own comics. Some of them even follow the same plots.
I'm trying to think if I even knew that either.
But I've got tons of those. I've got a bunch of... And his modern-day counterpart, the Ascended Boy, Don Rosa. I've got his stuff, too. Some really nice collections. Still collecting them because there's so many of them. But yeah, that was another big sort of hole in my knowledge that had to get filled much later. So I grew up thinking that like DuckTales, okay, yeah, Uncle Scrooge, because he was from, they obviously made him just for Disney's Christmas Carol. So his name is Scrooge, but no, Scrooge was invented he was invented for A Christmas Story though. It was what's it called? Christmas on Gold Mountain, something mountain. And
in the comics.
Yeah. And his first appearance is a lot of things. It follows sort of the early installment weirdness rule, and that he was quite different in his original incarnation. He looked a bit different, and he was a bit meaner and stuff like that. The whole thing was like Donald and his nephews had to like stay at some cabin to, I don't know, inherit money or something. I don't know. I own that comic, but not in any of those collections. I actually own it in French. Because
I've seen some of those comics in later years of the strips or some of them, but maybe have thought they were invented after Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Yeah, and I mean some were, but yeah. So for most of my life, I had no idea that Scrooge was like went way back because he did not appear in animated stuff.
No, I think I used to confuse him like Ludwig von Duck or whatever.
Yeah, Ludwig von Drake. And again, I got to see stuff like that because of Family Channel. That's how I saw Donald in Math Magic Land, which is hosted by him. So I love all that stuff. Anyway, yeah, so that's good. We'll have plenty of other stuff to talk about on future things. We can do some other anime. We'll stay off Disney for now and stay on Bluth. And we'll see what we can put together. But so anyway, that was Anastasia from 1997, Don Bluth movie with Fox, which again is sort of ironic because if you have Disney Plus, you can watch it on Disney. But of course, it's not. If you want to see Don Bluth's Disney work, it's on there. So, and that's something I haven't watched in a while. I think the movie he had his fingerprints the most on might have been Rescuers. I'm not sure. But anyway, stuff like that. So, I mean, I understand what Bluth meant, though. Like, from the late 60s, around the time Walt Disney died, into the 70s, although I still like the movies, it's true they didn't have the same sort of grandeur to them that they had, and I think that was one of the things he didn't like. So I get it.
Started like a Xerox animation almost, right? And didn't they trace over some
They did.
scenes?
Yeah. Like if you watch The Sword and the Stone, there's this part early in the movie where, you know, our main guy, the kitchen boy, he's like walking around, and the dog that hangs out in the castle loves him, and the dog runs up to him and jumps all over him and licks him, and he's like, oh, I like that. They use the exact same animation with different characters in the Jungle Book, with like a wolf jumping all over Mowgli, like 4 years later in 67. So yeah, they started kind of half-assing some of that stuff.
But like you said, I loved them too for the most part. You could see where they got weaker, but
yeah. And I mean, things worked out well because, like I said, his departure spawned some good movies and also forced Disney to sort of reevaluate and change what they were doing. So I mean, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, I still feel like in the long run, Bluth, who's like well into his 80s now, he was not young. Bluth was like 40 when he left Disney. So he was, in case people are wondering, he was like 41 when he left Disney. He was not young when he left. So he's a very old man now. And it's too bad that certain projects never got off the ground for him because he never had backing like Disney after that. Like, for instance, he wanted to do, you know, that Dragon's Lair video game was based on his animation. He always wanted to do a Dragon's Lair full-length movie. I think he even did like a Kickstarter for it, but not going to happen.
I think I did read something about that, yeah.
Which is too bad. But
well, I'm glad we got what we got because, like you said, Land Before Time, Secret of NIMH, American
and I hate to lambast him because I do think he went on a run of horribly bad movies in like the early 90s, but whatever.
We can discuss those. I don't know about getting to them.
Yeah, well, we can at least discuss them. But
but I do thank you for having me on the good ones, and hopefully you'll have me back for Land Before
Oh, for sure.
Time.
Yeah, we'll definitely work that out going forward. All right, so that's going to do it, guys. Thank you for anybody that was with us during. I forgot to look at the comments. So when I'm the person running it, I'm always so concerned about like the connection crapping out and stuff like that. So like I forget that. So if somebody like asks me questions or say anything directly, I'm sorry about that. And again, if you're a future person watching this after it's live, we thank you too. So that'll do. Anastasia 97. That's Jess. I'm Cole, and we'll see you again sometime soon. Hopefully, maybe even before the new year. We'll see how things go. Happy holidays. Peace out. Bye, guys.